So, welcome everyone to the latest XR design industry talk. Super excited to have Markéta here with us. She's an XR designer at Oisoi Studio, has worked on PaintingVR and their latest title, Wait, What's That? Which, as you said, came out a few days ago, which is super exciting. Markéta is going to be talking about her first 6 months as an XR designer. I'm super pumped. And so I'm just going to let her get on with it. Over to you, Markéta.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone, and thanks, Pip, for the introduction. So, as Pip said, I have been working as a XR designer not only for the past 6 months, but since April, which by now is some like 8 months. And I'm going to tell you a bit about, well, what I learned when I started working as an XR designer. Because before that, I was working in the traditional 2D UX UI. And even before that, I studied something around computer science, graphic design, and service design in Czechia. And I come from Czechia, in case you were wondering where that name comes from and the accent. And I moved to Belgium recently, which is where I am now. And so I come from the traditional 2D UX UI design background. And I already started working during my studies in UX UI, and I worked in different teams and projects, like from startups to corporate, really. And I got to XR in my master thesis in 2022 when I had a XR related course at the uni, and then I got really excited about it, and I was thinking, wow, this is the future, and how do you design for that? Because I was already designing 2D stuff and thinking, well, there has to be designers also for the VR stuff. Can I be one? Maybe I could be one. And then I chose a project for my master's that was related to XR design. And I started delving deeper in the topic, but it was only 2 years later-ish, now in April, that I actually landed a job as an XR designer. And I work at Oisoi Studio. That's where I landed. We're just a tiny little team, and you probably never heard of it anyway. But maybe you heard about PaintingVR. That's like the biggest title we have. And recently, last week actually, we released Wait, What's That? That's I will talk about it later, but technically it's like a Pictionary game in VR with a bunch of funny twists. So we're a tiny team of just 10 people, as I said, and so that means that I mostly work with 2 3D artists, 4 developers, and 1 product manager. So that's basically who I work with, and I will be also referring to them a lot during this talk, because I will be talking about the process, the workflow we have, and the people that I work with, actually. And the studio really focuses on creative apps. So it might be a game studio, but then we don't really make games, but more creative experiences for people who like art, basically. So when I joined in April, I already had experience from working in teams in 2D UX UI. I never worked in a game studio, and I never worked in an XR team. So that was a first for me. And for the studio, it was the first time they had a designer. So I was the first designer joining the team, and I'm still the only one there. So we had to figure out how to approach design together, or like how to put design in their process and their workflow. And when I joined, I started talking about like, okay, how should this like workflow that we have look if we have a designer now? And we imagined, okay, yeah, we have a task, we need a new feature, let's say. We think about what it could be. Then it goes through some prototyping and 3D art kind of stage. We hand it to developers and it gets tested. That was basically the idea. You know how it goes. The idea gets bended, gets turned around, and eventually, well, something comes out of it. We got to the stage where we needed to figure out the design process, or like the workflow we can have as a team when we have a designer now at Oisoi. And so I had this first task of adding a tool manager to PaintingVR, but there was a sub-quest of this task that we should also try with this task, how to do the workflow, just like how can we work together and how can we include prototyping in the workflow and everything. So adding a tool manager to PaintingVR. To give you more context, this is how PaintingVR looks, roughly. And when I joined in April, all the tools in PaintingVR were kind of like laying around in the studio. So you have this Painter Studio. There is a canvas where you can paint on. And the tools are normally placed on a table, on a little stool, or like in a brush holder, and they're placed there in the space. But we wanted to add more tools, and we wanted to keep adding more tools, really. And also we wanted to add some DLC tools that people could buy, special brush packs and stuff. And it would be pretty hard to add those if we would be just like adding stuff to the place. You can imagine it would get kind of messy. So the task was, let's add a tool manager for PaintingVR so that we can organize the tools and also have the DLCs inside that tool manager. And you can already see the outcome, but I will guide you a bit through the process. So sure, we went to ideation and we talked about what it should do, why we even want this, and what are the options that we can take. Of course, well, we ended up with this handheld menu kind of thing. But we were also thinking, like, what if it would be a piece of furniture? What if it would be like a drawer, shelves, or something like that, right? And so I went exploring those options, and I drafted all of these in Figma. In Shape6R. The drawers, the shelves, the panels, and the handheld UI. And I invited the team with me to Shape6R to check this out and really discuss there in the spatial which solution we would like the best, which solutions my colleagues think would work with what the app does, what we need from it in the future. And well, yes, finally we agreed on the handheld menu, and so I made more iterations of those. And now maybe you're looking at all those shiny brushes, fancy thingies. So that's what I would like to jump a bit to the collaboration with the 3D artists. So when I started prototyping stuff in Shape6R, I wanted it to look as close to actual PaintingVR. And this is one of the environments we have in PaintingVR, really the simplest one, and I chose to recreate the simplest one. So that when I prototype in Shape6R, I can, really get the feeling of how it would look in the app and how it would interact also with the other stuff we have there. So I asked our 3D artists to send me the 3D objects, really, and I imported them to Shape6R. And it worked actually pretty well. Or, I mean, I was pretty happy with it. So this is the actual PaintingVR, and this is my mock-up in Shapes. And then I would, when I needed to place some more things in that space, I would just do it in that mock-up version. Right. Here you can see my mock-up version, and I'm not sure how smooth or laggy this video is for you. I hope it's good enough. And you can see this part changing because I'm switching between the drawer, the shelf, the panel, the handheld UI. Right. And so then, as I said, we decided to go forward with this handheld menu kind of thing. And we started calling it inventory. So this is the brush inventory or the tool inventory. And I did this like low fidelity-ish, medium fidelity prototype in Shape6R. And then I took a screenshot of it and I brought it to Figma. And then I recreated it in Figma. And I did that a bunch of times afterwards as well. Just like building something in Shapes, taking some pictures, putting it in Figma, iterating on it, then taking pictures from Figma, putting it to Shapes, recreating it again, and just going back and forth until I was happy with the final result, and until I had something I could hand off to the developers also. So this is from Shapes to Figma. And again, you are looking at this and thinking, wow, there are all these fancy 3D brushes that are the same that the fancy 3D brushes that you have in Shape6R, the same fancy 3D brushes you have in PaintingVR. How are you doing this? So you already know that I asked the 3D artist to send me the brushes and all the fancy thingies that I imported to Shapes. And then I also took these like PNG exports of the brushes, and for that I used Spline. So if, well, some people know Blender and can export those things in Blender. Some people don't. I'm one of them, and I like, yes, I will learn. I want to learn, but like for now, I'm using Spline, and it's working pretty well for me. I hope you should be seeing that this is this full of objects Spline file that I have, and basically what I do mostly is that let me show you something nice, not this sponge, but basically what I do when I get a nice 3D object, I just bring it here. Yes, this one is nice. This guy you already saw in the first slide, and then I can position him the way I need, and then I export here, and I take this PNG, and then I bring it to Figma, and that's how I get all these nice mockups. So from Figma, I took the high fidelity version, I brought it to Shape6R, and I recreated it again. This time to something more high fidelity, more presentable, and this video is already a bit on the developer handoff side, because I was trying to also show like how it looks from different sides, how far are the brushes from the panel, and really demonstrate a bit better also for the developers how it should work and look. And then I took screenshots and I recreated it in Figma and I made a flow. So this is a flow of purchasing a DLC that I prepared for developers, and I'm using the Figma mockup to demonstrate very like straightforward flow. And so for my handoffs, generally I use videos from Shape6R, videos from Figma, and flows in Figma, and then also some feature description and notes. But usually these work for me the best. Of course, you could argue that I should invite my developers to Shape6R and show them instead of sending them videos all the time. But I find that the videos work like a good reference. I mean, like even after, serve as a good reference after. If they get to develop the feature next week and they spend several days on it, they can always come back to the video and check the specs. And they can also go back to Figma to see the flows or the Figma videos. And here is a Figma video. And this particular thing is kind of 2D, so it works. Of course, if it would be a more of a 3D interaction, 3D design, this wouldn't work so well, and then I would probably be using a Shape6R video. All right, and here's the final implementation in the game. I think it turned out pretty well, pretty good. But well, the users are to judge, huh? So we did ask the users. We did test this, but I will get to that a little bit later. Before I skip to testing, I want to talk a bit more about developer handoff and also show you some examples from Wait Was That? The other game that we made, the game that was released last week. It's like a Pictionary in VR with a bit of a twist. Because that game we made from scratch. So PaintingVR, I joined when it was already done. It was already out for 2 years, and so we're building on that. But Wait Was That? It was something we started from zero and had to figure out a lot more stuff actually along the way. So one example of developer handoff for Wait Was That? There is this word selection thing, because in Pictionary you get a word that you have to draw. We give users 3 words to choose from in case they maybe wouldn't know one of them. And I made this in Shapes.XR. I also made this very simple thingy in Figma to show what it's supposed to be. And then this is how it was implemented. Now, I will be very curious about how you guys do your developer handoff, because this is something that works for me, and I believe there are so many ways to do it. I would love to know later in the discussion, maybe. Another example for all the screenshots I was talking about, taking screenshots in Shapes.XR, pasting them to Figma, back and forth. This is another one of them because I created a flow in Shapes, then I took some parts of it, put a lot of notes on it, and put it to Figma. I also made some little videos for it. So there is this winner selection panel that we actually scratched from the app in the end, but it was there in the beginning. So I made a little Figma prototype of the animation to show how I would imagine it to collapse, and also a little Figma animation of the score appearing over the player's bucket. And here is a video of the prototype in Shapes.XR. That was about developer handoff, and now I'm switching a little bit to collaboration with 3D artists, again about Wait Was That? So as I was saying, Wait Was That? Was built from scratch, and as you can imagine, it's a multiplayer game, Pictionary game. So when you come to the game, you're in a private lobby, and then you can create a room to play a game with your friends or with strangers when it comes to it. And you go to this waiting room to saging, and there you wait until enough people join so you can start the game. So we were discussing, okay, what should be in this waiting room? How should it look? What should be there? And now, me as a designer, I was more focusing on like, okay, what should users be able to do here? So we had this like settings panel where you could choose what tools you wanted there, what special twists, and what kind of words. And then there is this blackboard that eventually had a tutorial on it. And as a designer, I was thinking about, okay, how this should serve its purpose, that you're waiting there for your friends and you're deciding what kind of game you want to play. While the 3D artists were more thinking about how to make this appealing and how to give it the right vibe so that it fits with the rest of the game. And I came up with this idea of, okay, let's put a big red button in the middle so that you can push it and start the game. And I made this ridiculous mockup that's just, kind of lo-fi. And I sent it over to Gert, our 3D artist. And he was like, you imagined something like this, maybe? And I was like, yeah. And then they made it. And then it was pretty. And then eventually, this is on the left, this is my mock-up, and then this on the right is a picture from the game, where you can see the blackboard, the tutorial, the big red button, and the settings UI, and a bit more stuff to add to the environment. Right, and now I finally get to testing. As I was saying, with the tool inventory, so we released that thing, and then we wanted to know if people get it, if it's useful, if they know how to open it even, how to scroll through it, how to take brushes out, how to put them back, all that stuff. And now this is a kind of a big topic that I'm still exploring, user testing in XR, and you guys probably have much more experience with it. So I will be so happy to hear your opinions. And also everyone on YouTube in the chat, if you want to share your experience with XR user testing or tools that you use or any tips and tricks, please do. I'm looking for them. Anyway, so what we did, and I will start in this single player remote area. Wait, this thing you remember? Yeah, I will start in this single player remote area, although we can also use it for multiplayer. So what I did was that I went to our Discord. As PaintingVR, we have a Discord community. People post their paintings, their creations. It's pretty cool. And they're very active there. Really nice community. So I reached to some of the people from our Discord community, those that have been active in the last days, posting their artworks and stuff. And I asked them for feedback, from written feedback, but also if they wouldn't mind recording videos of using the app. And well, it was unmoderated testing, but I tried to like moderate them prior to it and tell them, okay, can you please record a video where you say out loud all your thoughts, whatever you feel is uncomfortable, whatever is frustrating you, or whatever you like, on the other hand. Can you please say it out loud on recording? Record a short video and send it over to me. And well, of course, not everyone I asked did it, but a few people did, and it was super useful. It was really amazing to see people using something that I designed and hear their opinions, and especially learn from it and improve. Another thing that I think you can do when you need to see how your app is used is to watch what other people post on social media with the app. And then another thing we did for user testing was that we attended playtesting sessions that were organized by local game dev communities. I don't know if you people have those around, but probably yes, there might be communities of game studios that are doing some sort of playtesting sessions. So you could also join them and bring your headset there and invite people to try things. So we did that. And we also tested with people just in the office. And here, again, I'm super curious how everybody does this, but what worked for us was that we used MetaQuest Developer Hub. It's this app that if you develop for MetaQuest, you probably know. And the casting feature. And we connected the headset with a very long cable to my laptop, cast it to my laptop screen, and then I recorded my screen and I recorded my microphone of the laptop, and recorded what the people were saying about the app. So you can imagine a playtest or like a user testing scenario. We have a person there with the headset on. The headset is streamed to my computer. I'm recording my screen. I'm recording the mic, and I'm talking to the person. That worked pretty well. We didn't use any external microphones, but that would probably be an upgrade if the person would have an external microphone on them. Could have been also nice. In this way, I was able to get recordings of the testing sessions that I could analyze afterwards. Now I'm getting to the multiplayer part, because PaintingVR is a single player, and that's still easier, but when you are user testing multiplayer, it gets even more chaos and overwhelming, and people needing help at the same time. And well, if you do it remotely, what worked for us was that we joined people playing the game and observed and asked. We were playing with them, basically. That's a pretty straightforward one. But we also threw a party. So that was Oisoi is making a party again in the studio, come, and it was for the friends of studio, for the friends of our colleagues. And it was also a playtesting session. So one room in the studio was dedicated to playtesting, and all the other space was dedicated for having drinks and pizzas. Of course, I didn't get any because I was in that room testing with people, but it was super useful. And I was very hungry afterwards. So we had usually 4 people coming in and playing the game together in that room. It also worked very well with streaming from the headset to the laptop, recording the screen, recording the mic. My microphone was actually able to capture most of the people in the room, but as long as they were not shouting, but like it actually worked. So when I was analyzing the recordings afterwards, I could actually hear what people were saying, as long as it wasn't Dutch, because well, that I could hear it but not understand. But one thing that I would do differently next time is that I was there usually either by myself or with one more person, but we had 4 players, and that was too much, and we needed more help to help people put on the headset, set it up if something went wrong. Not all the people were used to working with headsets, so some of them needed a bit more help around. So get more facilitators. All right. User testing was my last chapter of the process, and that were my learnings from the first 6 months of being an XR designer. And I would love to know everyone's tips, and yeah, even like if you want to reach out afterwards and discuss some of it, go for it. Please reach out. LinkedIn is probably the best place to write to me. And yeah, I would like to know how other people's processes are and workflows. Thanks.
Oh man, that was fantastic. I enjoyed that presentation so much. Thanks, Markéta. That was great. It was really interesting to see how, like, so in depth other people's workflows and like how you design at Oisoi and how you're trying to like tackle similar problems. Your stuff about user testing was really interesting. Um, do you ever get devs involved with it too? Because I found that like getting devs involved with user testing is a really powerful way to like help them understand like user empathy and get them like really bought into the idea that like testing is important and like a really exciting moment of like the whole product design. I was wondering if like because I was picturing you alone in a pizza party and I was like, oh man, get some devs in there and you'd get pizza for
Yeah,
sure.
at the party they were definitely around. That was actually great, because everybody from the studio was around there and they were coming in and out. So there they were present when we do the playtesting sessions, for example, at the game dev meetups. Then that's usually the product manager and me. And when we have recordings and I find them relevant and interesting, then I sometimes send them over to the devs.
Cool.
But
I'd say also
sorry.
no, I was just gonna say one thing in terms of like your when you were doing your testing in the studio, one like killer thing I found is to like treat it as a live stream for the entire company. So you have like a stream running the entire day that is just like dedicated to user testing that anyone can like pop in and out of, and that like when I worked at Ultraleap, people really dug that because like it meant that like the entire company had access to see how like non-internal people was actually using the product. Um, for sure, that was a fun a fun way to go.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Uh,
I think they're a little bit scared sometimes to see it. So that's even more of a reason to do it, right?
oh yeah, you got to force non-designers to to see how actual users are using their products. It like it blows people's mind. It's crazy. Um, I was I will get to chat questions soon, and please keep on posting them. But I did have one more question for you, Marketa, which was I wondered if you could go a bit more into how you work with your art team because you seem to like Oisoi seems to have a really talented art team, and it was me starting at FitXR this year. Working with an art team was a like brand new concept to me, and so I've been trying to navigate that for the past 3 months and work out like what the best flows are. Realize just like how deeply integral they are to like the design process and like how much it's kind of like a fun dance between art and design trying to like merge form and function. And I was wondering if there's like any fun strategies you found for like working with like just crazy people who tend to work in art who are like wonderful but think in such like strange ways.
Oh, I was just going to ask, like, how are they, your 3D artists? Because that's you just described them. Also those that I work with, they're a little bit well, like especially Gert, the art director, is super talented and thinks differently, and it's very refreshing. Sometimes hard to work with, but actually, for me it's pretty fine. Sorry, one question. Should I stop sharing now so we can see each other
Yeah,
more?
stop sharing, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Um, but yeah, I think before I joined, it was Gert, the 3D director, art director slash 3D artist, who was doing part of the design stuff, like especially like icons and like the kind of like UI kind of stuff. Um, so I think he was also glad that I took that away from him, so he doesn't have to do it and he can do actual art stuff. But I'm not sure exactly what you would like to hear about or anything specific, any question.
Oh man. I guess so I work really closely with the art team, mostly because I'm like focused on the kind of in-game experience of Fit rather than like the UI flows. And so I often find that like there's this weird moment where you like hand off a design to art and then like I'm still trying to work out the best way to guide them through the process of like taking it from like purely functional design through to like something beautiful but that like retains the function. Um, and like I started by like being completely hands off to see what like the outcome would be. And now I'm trying to be like a bit more hands on and like guide them through like the iterations that they're doing rather than like just letting them go mad and then going, oh man, I've lost like all these important affordances that I put in. Yeah, I was wondering like if you found a fun way to like navigate through that without.
I think we just sent screenshots on Discord back and forth.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like again, maybe the experience is different for some of you guys working in bigger teams, but we're really just 10 people who meet in the office twice a week, you know? So, I mean, we work every day, but we just meet twice a week. But like we had that moment of meeting together in the office. So a lot of these things, a lot of the back and forths, literally just are like someone is sitting there at that table, a meter, 2 meters from me, and we just talk things through.
Sweet. Okay. Cool. Um, Dan, did you have anything to ask before we get to our chat questions?
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions. So, how long were you a designer? Like, were you a traditional UX designer prior to this? And
Yeah,
how long were you?
yeah.
How long were you a UX designer for?
Well, I started working during my studies, so like I have a few years of experience working part-time, and then I worked a year. Well, I graduated in 2022, so then it was like a year and a half of a full-time UX UI job. But before that, I was doing UX UI or like graphic design related stuff, and this kind of stuff for, I don't know, 6 years-ish.
Oh, cool. Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's interesting because it's interesting to see where the parallels go, because I think a lot of people either like coming out of school or they've been in the flat world for some time. And so making that transition is a interesting challenge. And that kind of brings me to a couple more questions. So basically right now you're using a bunch of really interesting tools. You've had to dive into this heads in, which, as you probably know, it can get overwhelming because 3D is very, very complicated. And to learn all of the tools that you would desire just takes a very long time, right? So like during this process, like what tools would, if you were to have like say 2 skills, what would they be? Like what would you invest in, or what do you want to invest in?
Yeah, like for the future that I don't have yet.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to be able to tweak the designs in tweak the implementation Unity stuff. So my designs get implemented, but they're not like entirely as I imagined. The spacings, the sizing, stuff are just could be nicer, and I would like to know how to go in there in the project that my developers have, not break anything, and also fix stuff, fix like the spacings, the visuals really, and sometimes the interactions, maybe like gestures, like to tune the little things, and then of course be a bit more skilled in 3D modeling. But then maybe something to mention, I was thinking about earlier that I was lucky to find a position where they really needed this kind of skill I have, and they didn't necessarily need me to be good at 3D modeling or at Unity. And I especially asked about that when we had the hiring process, when we had the interviews. I was especially asking, are you looking for someone who can do 3D modeling? Because I cannot. And are you looking for someone who can do Unity prototyping? Because I cannot. And I was lucky enough to find a place where they really were looking for a very UX kind of skill set, and not really that much of the 3D. And I'm learning that as I go.
That's cool. Yeah, it gets hardcore the further you go, and for sure, I'm still learning a lot more about Unity, and 3D is just a different whole in general. As Pip knows, talking to him about that process is fun. So real quick, from you came into PaintXR a little later than when it started, and when you joined, did they have any did they lay down any form of XR foundation work, either with scaling, foundations of how things, distance foundations of how things are distanced, or anything like that? Or you guys just kind of feel it all through?
No.
Okay.
Feel it all through.
Okay, cool. That seems to be common now. Sure. And then what was it?
I think these things, PaintingVR was created as a side project of one of the founders. So basically during COVID, Xander was just trying some VR stuff, and he made PaintingVR. And then they made it a company, and then now they have all of us doing more stuff. And it's also why I think the foundations are so fuzzy in a way.
It's also really hard to establish foundations, especially in this industry. And in a lot of gaming, they're still trying to catch up to what a lot of UI or 2D world has been doing for some time. It's definitely interesting. Okay, that's great. So let's get to some questions. So is there any advice for a designer who is trying to break into XR design industry? I graduated university and don't have much professional experience in design.
I guess maybe you guys would be better to answer that than me. I don't know. I feel like a beginner here so much. For me, it really worked that I had the master thesis. That was a big thing. Making my own project, taking a topic and making a project not for myself, it was for my studies, but technically it was something that I wanted to do myself. And then I could use that in my portfolio and in the interviews. So that was pretty good. And maybe, you know what, maybe it would be nice to attend hackathons. I went now in June. I went to an in-person hackathon in Berlin by Immersive Insiders. And now there is a design hackathon going on, but it's an online one, also from Immersive Insiders. And I think also, it depends if you're in Europe or in US or anywhere else, actually. So maybe I will not be giving any specific tips anymore, but there are a bunch of hackathons going on in both continents.
I'd say for sure the like personal project side of stuff is really important. So I started off as more on the engineering side of things. So I did like a computer science degree and then like a year doing like full stack web development. And didn't really know that like UX existed until I like moved into Ultraleap and then like found out that like this beautiful side of like computer science called UX existed and was like actually the thing I'd been looking for. And then from then was like, okay, this is where I've got to be, and like slowly tried to pick up skills until like I was essentially doing a design engineer's role. But I'd say what got me the job at Ultraleap wasn't necessarily the my like professional experience, so that did help. It was more the like side projects I've been doing on the side, so like Unity projects on the side, or like essentially showing the passion around the subject, even if you're not like don't have that professional or academic experience. If you're able to show that like you have the passion and like the drive to do it, and the like the technique is there, it just needs like someone to give you a shot. That often really helps you get like a foot in the door and get into an interview, and then like be able to charm the interviewers and land that first role I found. There was a question during your presentation from I'm sorry, I'm gonna absolutely murder the pronunciation of your name. I think it's Aptem. Um, he was asking, or they were asking, why did you choose not to use like the presentation mode in Shape6R over videos?
Um, you mean presentation mode to show it to the developers? I think that's the question. I think maybe I mentioned it, that I think the videos really serve well if you need something to have for reference for for longer, like something to come back to when the developers are at their Unity stuff and just need to check something quickly, right? And they might not want to go into Shape6R, they're on the presentation mode, do stuff. And another thing is that my presentation modes, they're not very good. Like I don't finish the fancy prototypes. I don't have like a fancy clickable thing that you can yourself alone go through and be like, wow, that's how it's supposed to work. For me, it's more like I do quick mockups of stuff and then I record the videos and maybe I even cut the videos so that it makes more sense. So I don't maybe even have like finished nice prototypes, clickable ones.
I find that like videos are such a more like
It's
less
accessible.
fragile artifact. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's accessible and it's not as fragile as like an APK or like an interaction. So like I find that I always share a video no matter what like I'm handing over, because I find like videos are like you can immediately watch it before you even get in, and then that like saves you 20 minutes of like faffing about, because you can just go, that thing there, that's wrong. If you're like trying to give someone feedback. But as well as that, it's something, as you said in your presentation, like in 5-10 years you can go back and watch that video, but in 5-10 years you're not going to be able to go back and like try that Shape6R room out. I think it's really important to try stuff in like in 3D and in a headset, but like it is that level of friction to get in is so much higher that like videos are a really important like uh first step towards doing that like second step of getting in headset. Lost Bam had a second question, which was, what's the biggest struggle in XR design other than user testing?
I think not having the standards is a big struggle, isn't it? Like, yeah, just trying to invent stuff, and you're like, there should be a way that this should work nicely, but we don't know it yet. And then you go through a bunch of apps and you see the same thing, like the handheld menus, for example. You see them done in so many ways, and you just have to like feel yourself which way is like feels the best for you. But then you're like, do all my users think the same? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You described that so well. It's like it's my favorite reason, like it's my favorite like thing about XR design is that like horrible lack of standards. It's like I go back to 2D, like I try and go back to 2D and just think, this is so much less fun because everything is already solved.
Yeah, it's the best and the worst. Like, it's the biggest struggle and the biggest joy, like the biggest thrill of it, I guess.
I think honestly, getting ergonomics and scaling right is just a nightmare. I think that is the hardest thing. And to be able to craft a system where you can be utterly consistent. You know, I was looking at Headspace VR XRs, and their text is terrible, right? They don't scale text. They don't use typography that scales correctly, and it actually causes a massive amount of discomfort. But to do that is a design system structure that is just inherently difficult. So having stuff like standards, I think they do have standards depending on what platform you on, but like they're very loose, right? Like Meta suggests things being 1.5 meters away at this thing versus 0.5 meters away, and like the hit area should be these, but then it's like, how do you structure that in a way where you can communicate that efficiently and be consistent? And I'm a very big design systems person, so like I'm obsessive with it. But like with XR, just trying to get that consistent and have a desired experience is just really hard.
Actually, you mentioned design systems, and I remembered another struggle of mine. So, because I come from the 2D UX UI background, I was used to working with 2D front-end developers, and like because I studied computer science and I did some front-end development before, I kind of get like how that works. And also I use a lot of auto layout nicely in Figma, and I do responsive design. Everything is nice and shiny. And then you go to Unity, and your developers are like, "What auto layout?" So maybe this is just us, or maybe it's just Unity. I don't know, but the making
Well,
UIs in XR not so good.
it's a nightmare. And then like Unity creates a tool specifically for auto layout, but then it doesn't support world space canvas. So then like it doesn't really work. So it's kind of like, yeah, all of that's hard. I think Apple's their HIG is actually pretty interesting in how they try to accomplish that goal. But that is for sure very frustrating getting into that field. I can't hear you, Pip.
Wait,
Still
we can't hear you
you,
still.
Pip.
No, I'd muted myself in two places. That's fine. The way that FXR has attempted to get around that is really interesting in that they use this tool called Viewplex, which essentially like embeds a web view inside of Unity, so that all their like UI is done in web, and then like just chucked into a Unity scene. And essentially we I should say rehauled our entire UI like a few months ago, like over summer, to use all of this Viewplex stuff, so that we can build it in web and have like beautiful like web standard UI rather than horrible Unity layouts.
But that's
And is
super
there
limiting too, right?
It is, yeah.
So is there any resource you should share about you could share about that? Or I don't know if it's like your FadeXR thing that only you guys know, or if it exists
No,
somewhere.
it's an asset we bought, I think. It is limiting in that like you're now stuck on a 2D plane and you can't do as much stuff as like you could with like basic Unity stuff. But for like if you just want a nice 2D UI to see in Unity, it's a nice quick way to get there. I'll chuck a link in the chat. The Probably the final question we had was from Vendi, which was PaintingVR is really interesting. did it start with user research or other research? What was like the basis of like Painting VR, and probably wait, what's that that like led to it being created? And I know you spoke about that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, as I was saying, Painting VR was created as a COVID hobby side project of Xander, one of the founders. So no, there was no big research trying to figure out what people would like. But the new stuff we're working on. So wait, what's that? That was not research very much. That was more of a it was more of a challenge for the team of creating something in 4 months. Turned out to be 5 months. But anyway, it was a whole thingy created in 5 months to test some technologies to see if we can do multiplayer. So that was we did that more to for ourselves a bit or to try some stuff out. But the next stuff we're working on, we're basing more on discovery research. We're doing some interviews with artists. We're doing interviews with people who use Painting VR, but also people who don't, who just follow art online. And we're looking more into like how people engage with art and what could XR bring them, or we could create for them. But yeah, it's very similar to the UX, really. Yeah.
I really love that Wait What's That is powered by Painting VR as well. When I spotted that, I was like, oh man, this is a genius product to launch. Because you've got like that beautiful like whole painting engine that Painting VR has. But like just applying it on something like fun and silly is so clever. It's great.
Actually, it's a different one though. They made a new one for it.
No way. Oh, that's
No,
crazy.
no, because painting is just like a very insider technical stuff. So painting VR works on flat surfaces, but it doesn't work on bumpy stuff, or like it doesn't work on like when you have a brick wall. Painting VR wouldn't really work on it. So for Wait Was That, one of the challenges was, can we make painting on objects? Can we make painting on something that's 3D and not just 2D? And that's why you get later there's like a coat of arms with a 3D unicorn on it, kind of thing, and you paint on it. Or there's the brick wall, and that's because they made a new system for it. But it's the same people making it, so there's like it should feel a bit like painting VR, but it's actually a different thing.
Wow. Sweet. So I think we're out of time unless anyone had like a desperate question to get in last minute. But it doesn't look like it, so I think we'll probably end there. Thanks so much, Marketa. This was like genuinely fantastic, like super, super interesting to see like just how in depth your workflow is at Oisoi, and like thank you so much for being so like honest and transparent about that. That's like genuinely like fascinating. Um, Thanks for everyone who has turned up. Please join the XR Design Discord if you haven't already. We're trying to make a lovely little community for people to kind of hang out and talk about XR design and share nice resources with each other. So please come hang out with us. Be our friends. Thanks, Dan, for hanging out too. I'll see you all later.